to screams. I asked Nick if he's used to it yet, and he said never.
How's everyone doing? You guys sound unsure.
I don't know. Well, the rain came for you because the world is crying after last night's episode. And so were you crying after last night's episode. What a night it was. I think it might have been, too, the record for the most goodbyes a Bachelor has given in an episode, right?
Has that been confirmed?
Was it like 6 women left plus Taylor? So
it
that's
depends.
7?
Oh, I had to send Taylor home twice.
Yes.
So I don't know if that counts a second time.
I also love that you and Corinne had the chance to shower and change for that day, and poor Taylor was in the same exact outfit, came from like the jungle of...
But in a way, she was cleansed by the voodoo priest and priestess. So in some ways, she also showered.
Yes. You know what? You're right, Nick. You're so right.
I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
To me now, that I look back and I was like, oh, so looking forward to that episode because I wanted to see what Taylor was going to do. But then that episode just rolled out punch after punch, and now I don't even remember what Taylor said.
You almost forgot she was on the episode.
Exactly. Let's talk about last night, and let's kind of go from the beginning, maybe with Taylor and Corinne and what that felt like in that moment, and then to realize that you were going to experience all this other crap along the way.
Sure. What about the Taylor and Corinne do you want to review?
Was it awkward for you to just see her walking through the door? Or were you kind of expecting it at all?
It's interesting because, it's funny always listening to people's kind of thoughts and comments. A big part of, being the Bachelor or the Bachelorette is that you have this kind of pretend position of power, right? You're handing out roses. And you sometimes the best you can do is try to get away with get away from that, and so you let things play out. You kind of take a back seat. So it's not normal to date multiple people, and so normally if I was on a date with someone and someone tried to interrupt, you would say no. But you're always every decision you make, you're going to disappoint someone, right? And so having just sent Taylor home, she obviously came back from the bayou. So I wanted to hear her out. So you kind of have to make those decisions. I was pretty steadfast in my decision, and it had really nothing to do with what Corinne told me versus what Taylor told me. And because truthfully, they really told me the same thing. It's just a matter of perspective. Taylor is a very smart person, but I kind of even thought this to myself, and I said this to one of my producer friends early on, is that I could tell Taylor was very smart, and I was very attracted by that, and I thought that was very intriguing. Johns Hopkins, she graduated at such an early age, but in that world, that can be a dangerous thing. And I kind of said that, her background in mental health could potentially be her undoing, and it ultimately was, because I think you sometimes can get in the habit of being surrounded by your peers, and it's easy to want to critique those people, but it's not the best environment to do that. And from Taylor's standpoint, she didn't call Corinne stupid or belittle her, but she also admitted to me that she told Corinne that she doesn't think she has emotional intelligence. I'm thinking, well, you kind of just said that. It kind of is. But again, she didn't mean anything by it. It's just and Taylor just couldn't kind of get out of her own way in that regard. And I think it was just best for me to say goodbye. But it had very little to do with Corinne and more to do with I just wasn't feeling it. And I just thought maybe she could use some more perspective.
Well, let's talk about Corinne, shall we? We all love Corinne.
Who show of hands, Team Corinne or no? Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
We all want Corinne.
It depends on where you go. Sometimes everyone loves, I can never tell.
I personally enjoy watching Corinne. And I think those moments that they don't show Corinne where she's actually being a normal girl, that's what I find the most interesting. Especially last night's episode didn't really focus too much on Corinne.
Yeah, there's finally a lot of other things going on. And you saw a little bit in the credit bed where, Jasmine was giving her the 100% chocolate. Corinne is... obviously a big personality. I think, again, with the way viewers watch the show, I get it, but I think it's important in life. You can be serious and you can take serious situations very seriously while still having fun or not taking yourself too seriously. I think Corinne is kind of the antithesis of that. And certainly she's a big personality, and when you're vocal, you can certainly open yourself up for criticism, which she has. But you can say the same thing about me at times. You know, I've gone for it, and I've gotten criticism for that. But she, you know, in very different ways, you know, you could say the same thing about Rachel as you could say about Corinne, while they're very different people. They made it easy for, like, sometimes it's very difficult being the Bachelor and dating multiple people. So there's a lot of burden in some ways on the women to, like, help drive the conversation, because while they might have their first conversation of the night, I might be on my 16th, you know, and sometimes it's just like, I don't know what to talk or ask about. Have I already asked this question? And so it's the women who can really just like, hey, let's have some fun, let's, you know, and help drive the conversations, are the ones who seem to have the most success with moving the relationships forward. And in different ways, Rachel and Corinne were very good at that, and you can see why they're moving forward. Yeah. And you know, there's always red flags in every relationship. Corinne has showed hers, and you know, right now you see me working through that. But sometimes she gets a little too much heat for ultimately is not really committing any crimes. I think we've all enjoyed a couple glasses of champagne and done some childlike things in our lives. You know, like what are you gonna do?
We've all enjoyed a bouncy house, right?
I mean, yeah, or something like it.
Is it weird for you to watch though Corinne back live when you kind of had a different relationship with her?
Yes and no. I mean, I was pretty much in the know of most things going on, and I was well aware that Corinne would probably be someone who would be misunderstood or get some heat. I don't get to see kind of those, you know, interviews or testimonials or whatever you want to call them. She certainly has some funny one-liners. The naps was pretty good. Yeah.
Last night's comment.
I heard she also quoted Jesus too. They didn't air that. She's like, apparently Jesus took naps too. That didn't make TV, but she's funny, you know? I mean, she makes you laugh.
I'm sure you can kind of relate to her too, because on your past seasons, you weren't always seen as what you're seen as now. You were kind of the villain.
People definitely called me the villain, yeah.
So
it's a very loose term,
yeah,
right? Like,
I don't see you as a villain, but you were a villain.
Yeah, I mean, in that world, villain can be simply a label given to someone who doesn't conform. Mm-hmm. You know, there's these unwritten rules in Bachelor Nation. It's been on for so long, and rules like, well, if you have a rose that week on a one-on-one or a group date, that you're for some reason supposed to take a step back and tell your friends who are attracted to the same person you are and be like, please go ahead. I don't have any interest in spending time with them. And if you say, no, you know what, I had a great time and I want to see that person again, that somehow is a villainous thing to do. I mean, and that's just kind of an unwritten rule that has kind of evolved over time. I never follow those rules. You don't see Corinne, and quite honestly, you don't see other people always following the rules either. But personally, for me, I think if you are truly genuine about making real connections, then you don't worry about silly things like unwritten rules or how you might come across from Bachelor Nation, or if you're going to rub someone the wrong way. If you're truly genuine, you are going for it. You're putting yourself out there at the risk of getting criticism. Because all you really can do is focus on the relationships in front of you and try to make some real connections. And if you're going to think about being a fan favorite or TV, which some people do, I would argue that you are, in fact, less genuine. Yeah.
And you do like a woman who's confident.
I do.
You also said you would like a raw relationship last night, which got a lot of tweets.
Yeah, I follow those. I mean, I can only imagine where people went with that, but. To elaborate, I think, again, if you're going to be in a relationship, the best relationships are when you can be your most vulnerable, when you can be your truest self. And I think that's why I use the word raw, if I was going to use a single adjective to describe it, is that, you know, you don't want to have to be like this version of yourself that's more like an interview version. You want to be able to show your insecurities and faults and have that person still accept and love you. And I think that's what I meant by that.
Well, I have to say, I'm going to miss Alexis.
I
she was fun.
Yeah, she was wonderful. Incredibly funny, wonderful lady.
Yeah, just a shout out to her because so much happened. I was like, I forgot Alexis left, guys. I mean,
I think we'll see her again. Yeah, maybe on Paradise.
Maybe in Bachelor in Paradise.
I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know inside information here, but my heart tells me she might be there.
Let's talk a little bit about Christina. You had your first one-on-one date with her last night, and I think we should give her a round of applause for her amazing story.
Wonderful. Well, it's not a great story, but it's certainly
Touching and timely,
very touching.
Very timely now with what's going on.
Interesting that way, huh? Yeah.
How did it feel for you in that moment where you kind of broke down her walls a little bit and got to know her on a more personal level?
Well, I had, again, gotten to know Christina. You didn't get to see a lot of Christina. There's just so much that goes on. You just unfortunately can't see everything. And I think you saw a little moment in Wisconsin where she kind of mentioned that she had a story and she wanted to tell me. And I almost kind of like shot her down because I knew I was going to give her a one-on-one. And in group dates, like you have 10 minutes and like someone walks in. And she had talked a little bit, so I knew there was an important story to her, and I did want to make sure she had the time. And so I was just like, hey, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to give you a one-on-one. I couldn't actually say that, but I wanted to give her her time. And so when I finally got a chance to sit down and talk to her, I mean, it is a very touching story. I think it's a reminder of how fortunate we are, as much as there's turmoil, not to get all philosophical, but we are very lucky to be, in this country. And on a day-to-day basis, I think we find ourselves kind of worrying and complaining about things that ultimately don't really matter. And when you hear a story like Christina's, I think the most touching thing for me is getting to know Christina is that she does, in fact, just have such a zest for life and is so appreciative of every moment and always seems to be in good spirits. And for someone who has a lot of reasons to have a list of excuses of why things couldn't go her way, and a lot of people, I think we do that sometimes, is we'll have a bad string of luck, and then we'll just use that as a crutch to explain away some of the other things. And Christina's taken the opposite approach in life and turned it all into a positive. And she's a very accomplished young lady. She's a dental hygienist, and just has a great zest for life. And it's very infectious and very attractive. And it's something that really just you admire about her, because I made that comment last night. Like when I was 5 years old, I was crying about kindergarten. I mean, and at 36, I cry. I'm like a whine about like the most petty things. I think we all do sometimes. And when you hear that story, it really helps put things into perspective. And I think those are rare moments that we should appreciate.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed that date. It was definitely a highlight. And then followed by that date was the tequila-infused volleyball tournament.
Boy, that went south fast,
you know what?
Right? I just wanted to play some volleyball.
It's hard to give a group of girls tequila shots and expect them to, not to go nuts, but to give a group of girls who are fighting for you tequila shots. Nick, that was your number one fault last night.
First of all, I might be their boyfriend, but I am not their father. They can do whatever they want. They are adult women. I am not here to tell them what to drink and what not to drink. Yeah, I mean, certainly I think there were some island beverages that played a role in that date.
Very Bachelor in Paradise, I have to say.
Well, it was its own thing, actually. But I think more importantly, I think it speaks to the intensity of where we're at. Looking back, and I mentioned this to Rachel when I was talking to her in that kind of one-on-one time, easily the two toughest weeks of that journey or process, or whatever you want to call it, are the 2 weeks leading up to hometowns. At that point, there are a lot of relationships that have been formed. There's a lot of emotions, and yet you're still living with the people that have a common interest. And week one, you go on, or first 2 weeks you go on group dates, and everyone's like, yeah, it's still super weird, but everyone's like, whatever, let's have some fun with it. Like, I barely know this guy, And so on the group date where all the girls were like grabbing me and kissing me, they were like, ha 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 ha, like it's kind of weird, but like no one really cared. Well, fast forward a few weeks, and in that world, a few weeks feels like eternity. And all of a sudden, you're still telling yourself, okay, it's a group date, so I have to be cool with this. But like it feels wrong inside. Everything about you is telling you this is wrong, and you try to accept that in a world that you feel stuck and trapped, and you start missing family and friends. You're cut off from the world, and while it's easy to criticize, it is a nightmare to be a part of. And I think you saw that with the women, and subsequently you saw that with me in terms of like, everything I do feels like the wrong move. But It's a very difficult part in this process, and that's why when you get to hometowns, the women are separated, because it's really about the relationships, and there just gets to that point where you just can't expect the relationships to move forward if these people are still living together. It's impossible. So I think you're seeing that come out, and that was a big reason why you saw all the emotions.
And then what was that night like, that cocktail party after the volleyball date? Everybody seemed super tense. How did you feel in that moment? And is that where you started to kind of get in your head a little bit and got a little discouraged, maybe?
I had lots of highs and lows throughout, right? And even in that moment, again, you don't get to see everything. I had some nice moments with some of the ladies. Even that conversation with Rachel, while she was opening about her insecurities and fears, it was actually a really great conversation. And I think it was a conversation that made me feel great about our relationship. Even little things like my conversation with Vanessa a few weeks back, when she kind of called me out, if you will, for the bouncy castle. Well, I thought that was a great conversation for her and I really was far more attracted to her after that conversation than going into it. But yeah, it was a very tense thing. And then sending Jasmine home, I mean, that was a conversation that went sideways. But it's also, it's never fun to send someone home. You know, on the flip side, you are narrowing it down. So with every person you send home, in theory, ultimately you get closer to your goal of hopefully having just one. But at the same time, it sucks trying to like have that conversation. And for better or worse, I've started taking the approach of sending women home as soon as I feel it. And it's easier to send women home in a rose ceremony, because there's this level of protection of like, well, if you don't get a rose, you say your goodbyes and leave. And there's really no awkward moment. Every woman in a rose ceremony, as confident as some might be, knows that they could not get a rose. And so they've kind of, all of them standing there without a rose are just preparing themselves for the worst. As opposed to sending someone home mid-date, it's out of nowhere. No one expects it. And that's hard, and it's draining, and like you affect people's emotions, and subsequently that has an effect on you. And I think, again, that's kind of where you see some of the stuff bottle up and come out. And
then, of course, the dreaded 2-on-1 ended up being much more dreaded than expected, because you said goodbye to 2 ladies. Yeah. But I have to ask you, did you at all, after sending home Danielle, look back and say, oh, maybe I should have kept Whitney around and given it a little bit more of a try, or were you really just...
No, but again, I think when I said goodbye to Whitney, and she asked, she questioned Danielle in terms of whether she was ready or not, and I was like, listen, this has nothing to do with Danielle. And I think there's a couple important things to remember. It's very easy to, the show is kind of set up to feel like a competition, but it's not. And it's set up to be this like stack ranking. Like if you go home before someone else, that means that he likes the other person better. It's really not about that, right? There's different reasons I would send women home, but the important thing is if I sent someone home, I knew that as great as they might be, I didn't want a life with them. Sometimes you find those things out in relationships sooner than other relationships, right? Sometimes it's because you spend more time with them, or they say one thing, you realize this isn't going to work. So when I sent Whitney home, it's because I knew I didn't want to be with her, right? As great as she is, it has nothing to do with Danielle. So when I sent Danielle home, it had everything to do with my relationship with Danielle. So I didn't think twice about my decision with Whitney. And again, because it's not like there's not like a place, or there's not like a position or a spot. It wasn't like, oh, I had an extra spot to keep. It was about the relationships, and both relationships I realized weren't for me.
Yeah. I've never had to balance multiple men at once, so this is new for me.
Not fun. Yeah.
So, after all of that happened, you had, a little bit of I don't want to say a breakdown. It was just a few tears.
A moment.
And you stormed into that hotel room, and I was like, oh, my God, what's going to happen?
I walked in. I was like, this is fine. Unannounced.
Everyone was shook. Everyone was it was an intense moment. What was that like for you? And was it all, like you said, bottled up, and it was just released? And
I think.
Do you end up happy, man? I'm so worried.
We'll see. You'll have to watch. But yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it in terms of emotions being released after they're bottled up. Quite honestly, I don't know what I was thinking when I walked in. maybe it wasn't the best approach, but I am someone who, when I'm feeling something, I need to say it, right? And going into this process, I promised myself that I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to be transparent. I'm not going to worry about the TV aspect, and I'm really going to try to get to know these women and find out if there's truly a relationship here. And I think I just felt like I knew the women would be shocked that I sent both home. And I think I just wanted to talk to them, and almost like it kind of backfired because I almost wanted to didn't want them to freak out. But I think once I sat in front of them, that's when it all kind of came out, and I started talking about my fears. And I think anytime you do that, and again, like, it's such an emotional roller coaster, it's a bit heightened. I can be an emotional guy. I have no problem expressing my emotions. Outside of that world, while those are real emotions, I'm not known by my friends and family as the most emotional guy, but I can allow myself to be in the moment, and that's just in a very emotionally taxing environment. And you see a lot of that just coming out.
Yeah, I know. I actually like the fact that you're emotional on the show, though. Don't we all? We like to see an emotional guy who feels like he's actually into it.
I'll take it. Yeah.
So what's to come? We know there's a little platinum coming our way or something like that with Corinne.
Maybe Corinne saves the season. I don't know.
A lot of people, again, were on Twitter saying, Trump won the election, the Patriots won the Super Bowl. Could Corinne actually win The Bachelor? Do you believe in this theory?
I think this season has proven that anything's possible. I guess we'll have to first see what transpires from me walking out, and if I pick myself back up.
You were there, right? Did you pick yourself back up?
I mean, I know what happens, but I can't give it away. Yeah, I mean, it's we'll have to see, but I think the intensity doesn't die down anytime soon.
So are you guys heading to hometowns next week, or do you still have another trip with all the girls?
Well, assuming I don't walk up and leave.
I hope you don't.
I mean, I hope I don't too. That would not be good. There would be one more destination before hometowns.
Okay. And that's where Corinne makes her move. Could Corinne save the day, everybody? Maybe.
I mean, come on, Corinne is. We all. I say there's two people in this world: people who love Corinne, and people who pretend to hate her.
Personally, she seems fun. I would love to get a drink with her and hang out.
That's a true story by anyone. She's actually a lovely young lady, and she has a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna just call it. I think it's Vanessa. Everybody, I'm rooting for Vanessa all the way. I can't really sense your vibe, but I'm trying. All right.
It is not my first time.
You're really good at this.
Thank you.
Before I pass it off to audience Q&A, though, how has the season, of course, you're the Bachelor, so that's a difference, but what have you learned from, this is your fourth time, and how has the season been different for you? And are you more, I'm sure you're more comfortable in this world?
Yes and no. I mean, not just, the most obvious answer is, yeah, I mean, I'm the Bachelor now, and it's just very different. So it's hard to compare. It's apples and oranges. Certainly with every season, I got more comfortable with that environment, but I was actually pretty comfortable early on. When I showed up for Andy's season, I came in very much as a skeptic. I was pretty upfront with Andy. I was like, hey, listen, my friend signed me up. I'm very much open to this, but you seem like a great girl. You're very beautiful, but I don't know. And then I got the first impression rose, which gave me a big confidence boost, and then I had an early one-on-one. And I mean, after that first date, I was like, oh crap, I really like this girl. And I was kind of all in at that point. And then once you really feel real emotions in that world, you really don't care about anything else. You don't think about the cameras. And it's surprisingly just how comfortable you get. And I think if you ask any of the women this season, they would say the same thing. So again, hindsight's 20/20. I like to, every experience I have, good or bad, I like to have a takeaway from it. I know people have seen different sides of me. Ultimately, I'm the same guy. It's not like I've had this big transformation because I've been on this.
You're much more buff, I have to say.
Also not entirely true. I just didn't take my shirt off a lot on Andy's season. I was in pretty decent shape, and then I decided to spread my wings, so to speak, on Paradise. But yeah, I kind of laugh because people will be like, "Oh, you got in all this shape." I mean, I ran track my whole life. I was a pretty athletic guy in my earlier years, and I've stayed in shape. Yeah, I guess sometimes I've been a little bit more in shape, but I've pretty much looked the same my entire adult life.
Well, you just didn't post all those photos and Instagram videos of you lifting weights. So
I got a little. I sold out for a couple months, but.
Well, who do you think is the most comfortable of all the girls left with this whole process, and who has really, surprised you with how they're?
Well, I don't know if anyone's comfortable with this process. I think I said that Rachel, maybe as much as anyone, from the moment she got out of the limo, felt like I've been friends with this girl forever. I think friendship is a huge part of any serious relationship, and while it was, Whitney, as beautiful and as nice as she is, it was hard for me to communicate with her. You just didn't have that natural vibe, and that's okay. With Rachel, it was the exact opposite. I mean, I could hang out with her for hours. I never felt like I was trying to think of something to talk about, or and it was great. And we could just kind of be in our own worlds when we were hanging out. But Rachel lost it a couple times too, in terms of like the pressures. No one gets used to it. It's a very difficult environment. But at the same time, to me, that shows that you care. If you're afraid of losing something, if it gets to you, if you go through that process and you're like, whatever, totally fine, like then you must not be emotionally invested, because again, you should never be okay with group dates. You should never think they're fun. You should never think they're normal. You should never be like, I'm totally used to them, because then you really don't care. Then you're kind of just going through the motions.
Well, if you don't pick Rachel, she sure would make a great bachelorette, right, everybody? But maybe you pick her. Maybe?
Maybe.
Well, I want to give the audience a chance to ask you some questions, so
all right,
let's do it.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, what's your
Nickelodeon.
name? Do you have a name?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not Nick. If you could go back to the beginning of the season and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I don't know. Can I say I feel like I did everything I wanted and hoped I would do? That world, again, it's not perfect, and you're gonna make mistakes, and you're not filming a TV show. I mean, I'm being filmed, but you're just living your life, and you're dating and having that being documented, right? And like watching it back, it's just like, oh man, I'm kissing this girl. These other women are seeing it. I honestly tried to be very conservative that way and cautious, but you just never know. And there's this balance, right? Like, it's easy to say, well, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, but when you want to be respectful of the other women that you don't even know if they're watching or not, imagine if you rejected a girl who would really put herself out there, as hard as it is to be like, I'm really nervous, but I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna kiss this guy, and be like, oh, whoa. Like, imagine how that would make her feel. And so you're constantly juggling these emotions, and so you try to do a better job of that, but I mean, there's no way to do it perfectly.
You just gotta kiss everybody. Come on, you got the chance.
Kind of.
Claire.
Hi, Claire.
How you doing? I don't know if this is on. Is it on? Hi. So you've been really open about your previous times on the show, and you've said maybe jokingly that you learned not to be yourself so much because it might not come off as well on screen. Is that really true? And in what ways did you find yourself maybe being more self-conscious or even altering how you would naturally act because you're more aware of how people will see it?
Yeah, great question. Truthfully, I think that was kind of a joke I made when fielding criticisms on the public streets of Santa Monica. Yeah, I think it's okay to admit that every personality trait that we have is not always going to be the most flattering and charming, and sometimes being yourself, can get you in trouble. But in that world, it's really hard to not be yourself. It's kind of funny. People will often criticize other people, like, oh, I think they're different with you. Well, of course they're different, not living, in a house. It is, and in being the Bachelor, you're always on. It's like, it's 19, 20-hour days. You are having 18, 19 conversations on a date. It is, to try to edit yourself is virtually impossible. And for me, having been on it so many times, You know, I've had my highs and lows. I wasn't about to start now, like, worrying about if I say this, could it come across the wrong way? I mean, in fact, if anything, I kind of pushed the limits, I think, as you're seeing, of just like, I'm just gonna be myself and go for it, you know, and whatever happens, happens. And again, I think that's the only way to truly try to get to know people is to, if it does work out for me, you know, I didn't want to end up with someone and then finally have them get to know me and vice versa. And so I think you really have to push the limits and you have to take advantage of not only the good moments but the stressful moments as well, because you can find more out about a person when things don't go their way than you can when everything's fine. So.
Great question.
Okay, hi.
Okay, hi, how are you?
So my question is, how does it feel to have your 4th chance at love, and are you confident that you will walk out of here with someone?
Well, I am hopeful.
Yeah.
He knows.
I spoiler alert, I know how it ends.
Oh my God, what? Tell us.
It is my 4th chance at love on TV, but well, I know it's TV, it's become personal because I've done it, and it is my life. And so in my life, I don't look at it, it's an opportunity to find love. I've had other opportunities in my life to find love as well. So I don't put too much pressure on myself. It's like, oh, it's my 4th time to find, like, actually, like, I've given love a chance a lot more than 4 times. I've met some great people, I've had some great relationships. It hasn't worked out. I'm actually very thankful of the relationships that didn't work out, nothing against those women, but you know, I feel like I'm in a good place. So it was important to me not to put too much pressure on myself, because there is a lot of pressure that goes into being the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, and the expectation that you have to meet someone, that you have to find someone. And for myself, being at my 4th time, there's a little bit more pressure. So it was important to me to not try to add to that, and just, if she's there, she's there, and if not, I had to be okay with walking away.
Ooh. Guys, I'm dying up here. I think we have time for one more right here.
Hi, Nick. I'm Katie.
Hi, Katie.
My daughter and I have watched you every step of the way.
Thank you.
We wish you luck.
Thank you.
Love you mostly, but there have been times where, you know.
Well, no one's perfect, you know?
Just want to know what goes on behind the scenes when you're not filming. Are you completely separated from the women, or do you do your own thing? What happens?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's not much time as the Bachelor. You don't get a lot of downtime. When you're awake, you're doing something show-related, and there's usually a camera on you. There might be like 45 minutes for me to get a quick workout in. But you're either doing your kind of testimonial interviews about either what just happened or what is about to happen. And as far as me and the women, for the most part, other than Fantasy Suite, you're never with any of the women off camera, because truthfully, they don't want an interaction to happen that isn't going to be captured. And it's not just as a fan, as a viewer, you don't want to, granted there's a lot of things that don't show, but if there's something really important happens, you know, especially that like kind of affects everything else. Maybe someone could leave. Maybe someone said or did something that kind of changes the relationship. And if that were to happen off camera, it'd be very confusing for everyone. So they're very protective of making sure that you don't have interactions off camera, other than obviously your off camera time in the Fantasy Suite.
Where's Chris Harrison been this season, right? I interviewed him on Build once, and he told me he golfs and like sunbathes, and when you were all doing all this crazy
accurate
stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
he's a good golfer.
Before you go, can you tell us, are you happy at least? Are you happy where you're at?
I like to think I'm always just a happy-go-lucky guy, and I appreciate all things in life, the good and the bad. So yeah, I think it's safe to say I'm happy.
And are you happy in love?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. He's not going to give us anything. But we got to watch. It's back on Monday at 8. We can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully we'll have a few more episodes, because I'm getting nervous. Like, you're giving
Hopefully.
me...
Otherwise, it's just, I mean, it won't be a bad thing. It could be
Just call off the show.
4 episodes of bloopers of Alexis, which I think actually everyone would be
That's a great
probably
note to
okay
end
with.
on. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for being here. Thank you, everybody. And watch The Bachelor on Mondays.